straight to the, in December 1942, you listed in the Army Air Corps. March 1993 is called active duty. He's pilot training school. He was assigned to B-17 heavy bomber flying fortress as a co-pilot. He flew for, what, 35 missions or something? Yeah, completed 35 missions.
Don't tell any more. You're taking.
I'm all done. Oh, I never mind that. I just want to stand up for you, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Leo Croce.
I have to say that Frank called me up to, or emailed me to be a presenter for your program today. And I told him that I had given the same speech about 4 or 5 years ago and didn't want to bore you with the same stuff. He said, don't worry about it. Nobody will remember what you said. So, Mr. President, fellow Rotarians and guests, I'm honored to be your guest speaker today. Our program today is to commemorate Memorial Day, which is going to be this coming Monday. And that's a day that we should give thanks and ask the blessings on all of those people who sacrificed their lives so that we can enjoy the abundance of those amber waves of grain and those purple mountain majesties that we talk about in America the Beautiful. You know, it's unfortunate that a lot of people see Memorial Day as just another day off, 3-day weekend. BART runs its regular schedule. The big retail stores have been advertising their blockbuster sales for about 2 or 3 weeks now. And NASCAR will run its Indy 500 like it does each year. As a matter of fact, a lot of people think Memorial Day is the Indy 500. So I don't expect everybody to wear a black veil or a hair shirt because it's Memorial Day. I'm not going to do that. But you know, that's one day that should be the most important day of the year in our nation. Memorial Day is intended to take time to remember and to give thanks to those men and women who sacrificed their lives for all of us, all 300 million of us, in our beautiful America so we can enjoy our freedoms, our liberty, and our quality of life. The words on the Disabled American Veterans Memorial states, freedom is not free. Too often, that freedom has come at the cost of precious cost of human lives. Since our Revolutionary War some 241 years ago, through all of our wars and conflicts up to the conflicts in the Middle East, it is estimated that 1,200,000 lives have been, American lives have been lost, pardon me, to protect our freedoms and to give us our freedoms, which so many people in the world envy and yearn for, and some with malice. As we honor and remember these million-plus heroes, it's not the time to debate the pros and cons of war or conflict. That debate should be for another day. I would imagine that many people in this room have had family or friends or relatives or schoolmates who have sacrificed their lives for our freedoms. We should never forget how fragile our freedoms are, and we should never forget the sacrifices that others have made on our behalf. J.P. Meyer said it best when he wrote, "They gave up many beautiful tomorrows for my beautiful today." Memorial Day is a very close and a special personal day for me. As Fred said, I was a combat co-pilot in World War II. It was the greatest conflict the world had ever known. There were more people in uniform from more countries than ever before and have since experienced. The United States alone had 16 million people in uniform during that war. That was about 10% of our total population at that time. Of the 16 million, only 600,000 are living today, about less than 4%. What? I flew a B-17, a heavy bomber in the 8th Air Force for my combat tour duty of 35 missions. We flew out of England. Our targets were in Europe and the European theater of war. As I relate some of this stuff today, you can see why Memorial Day might be a special day for me. I want to share with you some of the statistics about the Air Force in World War II. As I cite these statistics, I am not diminishing the valiant effort of the sacrifices of the other branches of our military. But the 8th Air Force, of which I was a member, suffered the greatest percentage of loss of any of the other U.S. military branches: Army, Marines, Navy, Coast Guard. The 8th Air Force had 23,000 pilots, crew members killed in action, 28,000 prisoners of war or missing in action. Here's some statistics. 1 of every 5 Americans killed worldwide in World War II was a bomber crew member in Europe. 1 of 6 Americans in all the branches of the military killed in the European theater of war were pilots and crew members of the 8th Air Force, of which I was a member. Let me digress for a moment. When the war began between England and Nazi Germany, the Royal Air Force of England bombed the targets during the daytime, the German targets. But the losses were so great and devastating, they quit flying daylight missions. They went to night missions instead. Fast forward, the United States gets into the war, Pearl Harbor and so on, so we participate in the war in Europe. And so we send the 8th Air Force over there to participate, and they flew the daylight missions that the Royal Air Force did not fly anymore. Here are some of the statistics. The 303rd Bomb Group of B-17s arrived in England in August of 1942. In 3 months, on 11 daring daylight raids, the 303rd Bomb Group lost 50% of its flying personnel and 120% of its aircraft. Couldn't get them back up in line. October 10th to the 14th of 1943, 3 days of heavy daylight raids, the 8th Air Force lost 100 bombers, 10 members to a crew, that's 1,000 airmen. My bomb group was the 398th Bomb Group. We were in England from May of 1944 till April of 1945. Our group flew a total of 199 missions, and on 31% of those missions, our group lost pilots and crew members who were killed in action, missing in action, or prisoners of war. A little closer to home on my statistics. Of the 12 of my 35 missions, about 34%, or 1 in every 3 missions, our group lost 1 or more bombers to enemy fighter planes, anti-aircraft fire, or mechanical failures on those planes. And as the good Lord would have it, we had 100% survival in our group. Miraculously, nobody was killed or seriously wounded. And unfortunately, not too many aircrew members can say that. On my mission, we had major damage several times on our raids on our plane. The fuselage damage, our oxygen system was partially shot out. We flew home from missions with one engine missing on a couple of our missions. One mission, we lost 2 engines and had to come home and make an emergency landing. We've had a fire on board. We run low on fuel, had to land at alternate bases because we could not make it home to our home base. Every mission was really a life or death struggle for us. We were contending with the mechanical problems of those war-weary patched-up bombers, the enemy fighter attacks, and that deadly anti-aircraft fire. While I'm up here today, let me share with you what it's like to be a co-pilot on Air Raid Day, the day of a mission. You know, that was 73 years ago, and I'm 94 years old now. And it's interesting how much I remember, how much I've forgotten, and maybe something I don't want to remember. But here's a typical day of being on an air raid. One pilot discovered, by the way, that air raid spelled backwards is diarrhea. And I know many crews that will attest to that. At our base, we check the squadron bulletin board each night to see if there was a mission the next day, and if your crew was assigned to be on that mission. If we were, in my case, we tied a white towel around the end of our Army cot, which also had our name on it. 2 a.m. in the morning, flashlight in your eye from an orderly says, breakfast at 3 a.m., briefing at 4 a.m. So you get up, get dressed, and trudge along back the days of cold and the dark to the mess hall. 3 o'clock, you have a breakfast of powdered eggs, powdered milk, coffee, tea, toast, and I ate very lightly, and I'll tell you why later. Sorry. After breakfast, we have the opportunity of stopping by the chaplain's office for Holy Communion or blessings, and that's one stop that I never missed, I will tell you. At 4 a.m., we go to the briefing room, very dramatic moment. Our commanding officer's up on the stage with a curtain over the wall, pulls back that curtain, a huge map of Europe with yarn, colored yarn, showing us where our target's going to be for the day and how we're going to fly back home. Also, during that briefing, we learned a lot of important information. What our position is going to be as we're flying into the squadron's location, also what the radio frequencies will be, code names we're going to use, something about the weather, anticipating a fighter pilots and that deadly anti-aircraft fire, and a lot more. So, after we do that, we go through the briefing, we go to the squadron room and get into our combat gear. Now let me tell you what that entails. You take off your regular uniform, keep on your shorts, your t-shirt, you put on long johns. Why long johns? When you're flying at 24,000 to 30,000 feet, it's anywhere from minus 35 to minus 50 degrees below zero. That's 67 degrees to 87 degrees below freezing, bitter cold. So you put on an electrical flying suit. Well, that electrical flying suit, all if it shorts out or if the electrical system gets shot out, you don't have any heat. So then you put on a flight suit, and then on top of that, you put on wool socks, pardon me, over your regular socks. You put on fleece-lined leather flying pants, put on fleece-lined leather flying jacket, put on your fleece-lined leather flying boots, you put on silk gloves, and you put on fleece-lined leather flying gloves over that, put on a fleece-lined leather flying helmet with ear jacks, you put on your goggles, put on your May West life preserver, and you put on your parachute harness. That's only part of it. When you get out to the airplane, you put on a very uncomfortable rubberized oxygen mask that you have to wear with a tube that connects to the oxygen system on your plane. You connect your earphones to the radio system, you collect the electrical suit to the electrical system. You put on the throat microphone so that you can talk without using a hand microphone, so you can fly the plane or shoot those 50 caliber machine guns. Also, you then put on a flak vest, a bulletproof vest. Kind of like you see at the SWAT team on 6 o'clock news, only these are a little heavier and a little bit bigger. And then before we get to enemy territory, we put on a big, thick, heavy metal helmet. You know, I have to tell you, we look like something that should have been in Star Wars that Disney hasn't even thought about yet. We were really something to see. It's about 5 o'clock now, so they truck our crew out to our airplane, and the pilot and the co-pilot, I'm sorry, make a thorough check of the airplane with the ground crew chief, who's a very important guy. He's probably been up all night patching up yesterday's damage, tuning up the engines, fueling our airplane, and helping the ordnance people load the bombs and the ammunition onto our plane for the mission. There's an old Air Force adage that says, on mission day, make sure that your gas tanks are full and that your bladder is empty. Now let me explain that. Thank you. It's very difficult to take care of your personal body functions when you're flying at 30,000 feet. It's minus 50 degrees below zero. You're being shot at by enemy fighter planes or that anti-aircraft fire. You have all this gear on. Very difficult to take care of your bodily functions. That's why I ate a light breakfast, okay? Now, I'm going to put this on. After we'll take care of the crew meets again about 6 o'clock in the morning after we've done all of our things, and we go over the highlights of the mission, make sure we're all on the same page, radio frequencies, code names, what we're supposed to look for, what the weather's going to be like, and so on. Then after that, we get into our places on the airplane and prepare for takeoff. About 7 o'clock, we get a yellow flare from the control tower, which means start taxiing out for takeoff place, which we do in a predetermined order to get out there. Then we get the green flare that says it's time for us to take off. A bomber takes off every 30 seconds. You can imagine the turbulence on that runway. Big bomber going 30 seconds behind him, another 30 seconds behind him. If you're familiar with England, inevitably you flew up through the fog and the overcast, so you're flying blind, you're on your instruments. The only thing you know is that there's a heavy bomber 30 seconds in front of you and another one 30 seconds behind you, and if you feel the turbulence, it's a ghost ship that's getting too close to you, so it's a very, very touchy, difficult time. Let me digress again. A bomb crew is made up of 4 squadrons. Each squadron has a maximum of 15 crews, 15 airplanes at one time. Normally on the mission, they put up three squadrons, 1 squadron fan down, and you fly 12 planes on that. So a regular mission would be 3 squadrons, 36 bombers. On a maximum efforts, 4 squadrons, 60 bombers. Well, you're climbing through this fog, overcast, you break out into the open, and this is what we do. We start flying in an oval pattern. There's a radio beam that comes up from our base called the buncher, which we're all tuned into. We're flying around and we're watching for our squadron leader who's firing a designated colored flare. We fly around till we get into position with him. They all do that. When our squadron's together, our squadron leader now leads us to the bomber command of our bomber group, and he's flying a designated colored flare, so that all of the squadrons are now gathering around the bomb leader. Very dangerous time. 36, 60 big bombers in the air. And that gets complicated because in the same geographical area, there are other bomb groups doing the same thing, flying around their bunchers, getting into their positions. So there are hundreds of airplanes up in that sky at the same time. So, very difficult time, very scary time for you, but they really have to pay attention. Well, this choreographed dance that I described takes about an hour, so about 7 o'clock, we're pretty much in shape, and I mean after 7 o'clock, an hour from 8 o'clock, and just all the time we've been climbing, we're probably at 10 to 15,000 feet, have to put on those uncomfortable oxygen masks at 10,000 feet for the rest of the mission. We then get our bomb group in line with the other bomb groups that are up there. It's much like a parade. If you go to the rodeo parade at Livermore, you see the contingents that are all waiting to get into play, goes by, they get in line and fall. We did the same thing. At a precise time, altitude, and place, each bomb group falls into what we call the bomber stream, and we continue on their way. At a designated time and place on the English coast, we take off for the target for the day, someplace over Europe. We're flying, gaining our altitude all the time so that we're at the designated altitude of 24 to 30,000 feet before we get to the enemy territory, and then we put on that big helmet that I talked about. So about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, depending upon the distance of the target, we come to the target area. And then we come to a very important place called the IP, the initial point. And from the initial point, before you fly to the target, your airplane must be kept on a straight path, constant altitude, constant airspeed. Can't take any maneuvers to avoid fighter planes or the flak. If you do that, your bombs are going to be spread. You fly straight, always so your bombs have got a chance of hitting that target. Well, if you understand you're flying straight, level, same speed, those anti-aircraft teams on the ground have radar, they're zeroing in on you, but we can't take any evasive action and have to fly through that mirage to get our bombs done, bomb dropped. So the whole crew is waiting for the miraculous words from the bombardier, bombs away, followed by, let's get the hell out of here. So if you make it through that mirage, we now start heading for home, and we follow that same route that we picked up at our briefing that morning. We're blessed now because...
What was your target? How did you, was it VFR or clear weather when you were dropping?
Depends. Both. We also have P-51s and P-47 fighter planes that are our planes that are now protecting us because they managed to get on some Tokyo tanks so they can get out there further and give us better protection during these missions. And they were good to see, our little friends, our little brothers. Sometimes we flew missions where we zigzagged across Europe, passing major cities and major industrial areas. Two reasons. One, to confuse the enemy of what the target might be, and to attract up the enemy fighter planes so they would attack us. Then our fighter planes would take them on an aerial combat so that we could have air superiority over the enemy territory to help us on future bomb raids, as well as helping the soldier down on the ground. The only problem with that was we were the bait to bring those guys up and take us on. So, we make it back home, we get back to the home base, maybe it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, we land again in designated order. If you have wounded on board, you shoot flares and the alerts the ambulance people down below to when you land to pick up the wounded and take them to our base hospital. After we land, park our plane, we go to an interrogation, debriefing. Now, each crew sits at tables about like this, so in our squadron room, and there's an intelligence officer with us. And they want to know everything about that mission. Did any of our bombers go down? If they did, do you know where it was? Did you see any parachutes open? How many people were able to bail out? Were you attacked by fighter planes? If you did, how many were there? What type were they? How did they attack you? From above, below? What about the anti-aircraft fire? Accurate? Heavy? Light? How about the weather prediction? Was that okay? All this information is gathered from all of our crews and the other bomb groups doing the same thing, putting all this information together so we have a better chance of being successful on future bomb raids. So it's about 5 o'clock now when we finish that, but before I have to tell you that while you're in the debriefing, the Red Cross is coming around with trays of coffee and tea, cigarettes, I never smoked before I started then. It took me 45 years to quit. Then they come by with a tray of shots of whiskey. To get a shot of that whiskey, you had to sign a paper that said, "This is for medicinal purposes only." Now, some of the crews wanted to have a big celebration if and when they made it through their 35 missions. So they had a bottle in there. They would pour their shots of whiskey into the bottle so they'd have a nice package for their celebration day. Well, I have to tell you, knowing that the odds were 1 in 3 of living through the 35, we drank ours every time. Well, after the debriefing, we go back to the squadron room, get out of all that gear that I just described to you, put on our regular uniforms, and head for the mess hall. That's about 6 o'clock now. You know, we had anything from breakfast at 3 o'clock in the morning till 6 in the afternoon. So you could be hungry, but sometimes after a mission, not much of an appetite. Our squadron, our base commander, Colonel John P. Hunter, was a West Point graduate and a very formal officer. And he required all of us to wear neckties to the mess hall. Even if you'd been on a mission all day, you still wore a necktie. That was the discipline. But I have to tell you, he was really a great commanding officer, well liked by everyone. Unfortunately, Colonel Hunter was shot down, killed on a mission 2 days after I had finished all of my missions while I was waiting on the base to get orders to come home. Well, after our dinner, we head back to the squadron room to make sure that, or just to look to see if there's a mission for the next day, to see if we're on that mission. So then you go back to your hut and maybe write a letter home, thank the Almighty for making it through the mission and remembering those that didn't. Then sleep if you can and sweat out the next day's mission. So that was the day. You know, when we're flying these missions, we're flying between 24,000 and 30,000 feet over enemy territory, sub-freezing weather that I described. The planes we're flying in have no heat, they have no insulation. The aluminum rivet and rivets you see on the outside of the airplane are the same aluminum and rivets we see on the inside of the plane. No pressurized cabin, no heat, no padding, no reclining chairs, no carpeted runways, no stewardess walking up and down the aisle offering us cocktails and peanuts, and no in-flight movies. Just a bare airplane we're flying up there. Along with that, we have to put on those uncomfortable oxygen masks for about 4 to 6 hours, and they're your lifeline, by the way. We're on a constant lookout for enemy fighter planes and flying through those barrages of flak. We do what we call an oxygen check every 5 minutes. And the reason we did that was, if you were without oxygen for 5 or 10 minutes, chances are you wouldn't make it. So, in the heat of the war going on, we have a corrugated rubber tube that connects your oxygen system to the bulkhead. Well, you know, if you're firing or doing this, that could come out. Also, it's so cold that the condensation from your breath freezes in this tube. You got to keep wrenching that thing. So we do the 5-minute check, oxygen check. Each crew member reports that they're okay or whatever, and they tell us they've seen anything wrong with our airplane, any damage, what they've seen, or other observations of the mission that we should know about. And along with that, in that 5-minute check, spend time talking to the navigator. If he gets seriously wounded or killed, we have to know where we are, heading to the target, and are heading to get back home. It's our responsibility to get that plane and that crew back to our base safely. So, meanwhile, we're also doing a constant check of the instrument panel there to make sure everything's okay, and we're keeping a close eye on the fuel consumption. You know, all this is going on when we're flying a 65,000-pound airplane with 4,800 horsepower engines out in front of us. We have 2,700 gallons of high-octane fuel in the wing Tokyo tanks, and then a big tank behind the pilot's bulkhead. We're flying very close formation. The reason you do that so that the fighter planes can't get through and attack you. So doing all of this, I have to tell you, is very stressful and very exhausting. Doing this for 6 to 10 hours of flight time when you're on these missions, and it takes a lot of energy for you to do that. So in our squadron, what we did was squadron procedure. The pilot flew for 15 minutes, and then the co-pilot flew for 15 minutes. 15 minutes, 15 minutes, to relieve that stress and the anxieties that you went through. But you didn't just sit there when you had your 15 minutes off and you're up there. That time you did that oxygen check, kept contact with the radio man, talked to the navigator, kept a close eye on those 40 or 60 dials you have up there watching that fuel consumption. So, you see, as you think about the world, we're known as the fly boys over there. But you know, we're not as glamorous a life as they make out in the movies. It's what, 12 o'clock high maybe, and some of the novels that you read. We're not that glamorous. But you know, when you're 21 years old, and you're flying these missions, although it's frightening, it's exhilarating and it's really exciting. And that adrenaline really flows. You're 21 years old. You know that you're invincible, you know that you're immortal, and you know you're indestructible. And you're smart enough, you know it's okay to be plenty scared. So, enough about me. At each of your tables is a little container with American flags. If I each take one of those, please. You have to look around, they fit in the middle. I'm going to ask you to, on this coming Monday, which is Memorial Day, if you take that little flag, and you pin it on your lapel, your blouse, your shirt, whatever, so that your spouse or your soulmate or your kids, your grandkids, or even the guy at the gas station down the corner says, hey, what's with the flag? Let that little act be a reminder to us, as well as those around us, that it's Memorial Day and not just another day off, a 3-day holiday, or the Indy 500 races. It's a day that we should remember and celebrate the lives of those men and those women who made that supreme sacrifice so that we can enjoy our lives, our liberty, and our pursuit of happiness. Remembering that freedom is not free. I'm going to ask you all to please stand for a moment. Bow our heads, if you will. Let us honor all of those who gave their lives for our freedoms with a moment of silence, remembering that freedom is not free. Thank you. Please be seated. I'd like to conclude my talk today with a poem written by Kevin Whitaker. It's entitled, Why Do You Still March, Old Man? In your mind's eye, place yourself on Memorial Day parade, okay? Why do you still march, old man, with medals on your chest? Why do you still weep, old man, for comrades laid to rest? And why do your eyes gleam so when you hear those bugles blow? And why do you still grieve for a war of long ago? You seek answers from me, young man? It's by God's good grace that this war is old. We were once like you, young man of youth, and yes, quite bold. And in our youth we heard those notes of the battle's bugle call. They pinned silver wings on our chests and hoped we would not fall. I'll tell you why I march, young man, with medals on my chest. I'll tell you why I weep, young man, for comrades laid to rest. Through misty eyes of long ago come visions of days gone by, when boys of tender youth flew forth to fiery skies. Yes, we buried them in blanket shroud, the young flesh scorched and blackened, the communal grave newly gored with a blood-stained earth and bracken. And you ask me why I march, young man? I march to remind you all, but for those brave and fallen youths, would never have known freedom at all. Thank you.
Whoa. On behalf of the Rotary Club of Livermore, I'd like to present you a little olive oil.
Thank you very
And
much.
thank you so much for coming. You got one more thing to do, though. One more thing to do.
No questions?
And
You can sit away, who've been here before.
You can stick around and answer any questions.
Oh, absolutely.
And here comes a big one. Here we go. Last three numbers. 901.
Yay!
Right after me. I was 900. Doggone it. Thank you.